Welcome to the Audio Mastering Explainers. In the aftermath of the Suno AI and Warner Music settlement, do you see this as a positive development for the future of music, or something even more concerning? Music producer, songwriter, and mastering engineer Edward Vinatea was asked this question, and Edward's answers will surprise you. So let's get right into this short video.
And boom, right there. That single sentence from Edward Vinatea just cuts right to the heart of the whole argument. While pretty much everyone is busy debating the little details of the deal, he's arguing that we should be looking at the much bigger picture, a battle for control over the future of music itself.
So, to really get our heads around his perspective, we're going to break it all down into 5 key parts. We'll kick things off with his fundamental distrust of the deal, then unpack the hypocrisy he sees in the very idea of music ownership. After that, we'll explore what he believes is the real motive, analyze the strategy behind targeting Suno specifically, and finally, see how he flips the script to frame AI as a tool for liberation.
Okay, let's dive right in. Before we get into all the deep, complex arguments, we first have to understand the immediate kind of gut reaction from a musician who's been in the trenches and seen how this industry really works for decades.
Now, if you just look at the headlines, the public conversation around this whole thing seems pretty simple. You've got 2 main camps, right? On one side, you have the optimists. They're saying, hey, this is great. It gives AI companies a legal way to use music catalogs, and maybe it'll even create new ways for artists to get paid. But then you got the skeptics, and they're worried. They're saying, hold on, this doesn't fix how these AI models were trained in the first place. And what's to stop the labels from just replacing human musicians with AI?
But here's where Edward Vinatea comes in and just slices right through all of that noise with something way more fundamental. For him, the details of this specific deal almost don't even matter. His skepticism comes from a deep-seated distrust rooted in the long and, let's be honest, often shady history of major record labels. He's not just questioning this one deal, he's questioning the motivation behind any deal made by an institution that, in his view, has always put its own profits ahead of its artists.
And that's really the core of this first section. The argument is that we shouldn't be getting lost in the surface-level pros and cons. We need to look at the underlying premise. From his point of view, the real goal here isn't to protect artists or to make AI legitimate. It's about an old power structure trying to get its hooks into a new disruptive technology to make sure they stay in control. And this idea of control, well, it leads us straight into his next point, which is probably the most provocative one. He's basically saying that the label's entire argument that AI is stealing musical styles is built on a giant foundation of historical hypocrisy. This is the question that really gets you thinking, doesn't it? It challenges the entire narrative the labels are pushing. They're talking about AI stealing styles, sounds, vibes. But Vinatea is forcing us to stop and ask, wait a minute, can you actually steal something that nobody has ever really owned in the first place? Think about it. He argues that the basic building blocks of music, the things we all use, have always been part of a shared human culture, not some piece of private property. Nobody owns a I-4-5 chord progression. Nobody owns the 12-bar blues structure. You can't put a copyright on a swung rhythm or a certain way of singing or the entire vocabulary of a genre like rock or jazz or hip-hop. These are like a communal toolbox that artists have always borrowed from, remixed, and built upon to create something new. And this timeline just lays that double standard out perfectly. I mean, the history of popular music is filled with artists and labels making fortunes from the innovations of others, especially white artists borrowing from black musical traditions. Elvis became a global superstar using the styles and even the songs of black artists like Big Mama Thornton. The Beatles literally built their sound on the back of American R&B. Back then, everyone called it inspiration. But now, today, when an AI does the exact same thing, learns from and reinterprets existing styles, suddenly the industry is screaming theft.
And that's the final sharpest point of this section. The argument here is that the word theft is just a convenient weapon, and it's one they only use when it suits them. The industry's moral outrage only seems to magically appear when its own catalog, its own intellectual property, is the thing being copied. It's a one-way street, and Vinatea is calling them out on it.
So, okay, if this fight isn't really about plagiarism or protecting culture, then what's actually going on? What's the real motive behind a deal like this?
Here it is. This is the core thesis of the entire argument, laid out plain and simple. He's stripping away all the fancy legal and moral language and just saying, look, this is a business move, a power play. He believes this is an existential fight for the major labels because they're looking at a future where their whole reason for existing, being the central hub of the music industry, could just disappear.
So how exactly does AI free musicians and by doing that threaten the labels? Well, it basically dismantles the three pillars of their power. First, production. For decades, you needed a record deal to get into an expensive studio with professional producers. The labels controlled that access. Now, AI can help anyone make a professional-sounding track on a laptop. Second, distribution. The internet already cracked this open, but AI just makes it even easier. And third, and this is the big one, gatekeeping. Labels used to be the ones who decided who got famous. Now, algorithms on TikTok and Spotify decide what gets heard, completely bypassing the old gatekeepers.
And this slide right here, it visualizes that collapse of control perfectly. Just look at it. Across the board, from how music is made, to how it gets to you, to how you even find it, the absolute chokehold that major labels once had is just fading away. AI isn't just some new toy, it's like throwing gasoline on a fire that's been burning for years. It represents a massive, fundamental shift in the power dynamics of the entire music industry.
Okay, this brings up a really fascinating strategic question. If the labels are so worried about AI models being trained on their music, why go after a relatively new, small company like Suno? Why not sue the biggest players in the game, like Google or Meta? The answer, according to this analysis, is just a cold, hard calculation of power and risk. I mean, think about it. Going after a tech giant like Google or Meta, that would be legal and financial suicide. These companies have deeper pockets and bigger legal teams than all the major labels combined. Suno, on the other hand, they were a much safer target. A young, high-profile, and vulnerable company. They were the perfect place to make an example and try to set a legal precedent without betting the farm.
But let's dig a little deeper into why big tech is basically untouchable. First, the labels need them. They get massive licensing checks from platforms like YouTube, and they rely on them for promotion. You don't sue your biggest business partners, right? Second, like we said, the legal fight would be unwinnable. And third, just imagine trying to prove in a courtroom exactly what data was used to train a gigantic model like Google's. It'd be a nightmare. So the labels pick fights they actually think they can win.
So the crucial takeaway here is this. Suno wasn't targeted because it was the biggest or the worst offender. It was targeted because it was the most powerful proof of concept. It showed the entire world that you could create high-quality, catchy music quickly, cheaply, and without a record label. Suno's real crime wasn't copyright infringement. It was exposing just how vulnerable the labels really are by democratizing the act of creation itself.
All right, so if this technology is basically unstoppable and the labels are just fighting to control it, what does that mean for the future of music? In this final section, from Vinatea's perspective, totally reframes AI, not as some threat we need to contain, but as the inevitable tool of liberation for artists.
You know, the comparison to Napster is impossible to ignore here. The music industry tried to sue file sharing out of existence, and we all know how that turned out. It failed. The technology just changed shape and kept spreading. Vinatea argues the exact same thing is true for AI music. You can't sue a technological revolution into submission. Even if you shut down one company in the US, another 5 will just pop up in places where US copyright law doesn't mean a thing. The genie is well and truly out of the bottle.
And this table just brilliantly illustrates the massive disconnect between how a working creator and a corporation see this technology. For a musician like Edward Vinatea, the questions are simple and practical. Can this tool help my idea sound better? Can it help me work faster? That's it. It's a creative amplifier. The whole corporate obsession with copyright, to him, that's a secondary issue. It's a problem for the lawyers to figure out if a song happens to blow up and go viral. He sees copyright as a potential issue to manage, whereas the labels see it as a weapon of control.
And that brings us to the final, stark summary of this entire thing. This isn't a conflict between humans and machines. According to this perspective, it's a conflict between two groups of humans with completely opposite interests. On one side, you've got working musicians who see a powerful new tool that could finally free them from the old system. And on the other side, you have the major labels, who see that exact same tool as a direct threat to their decades-long monopoly over how music is made and sold. Okay, the controversy with Suno has just only begun. What's going to happen to music generating revenue for their creators on Suno? From the legal point of view, is it still a service you should bother to use in the future? How do you personally see the future of AI music? If you have any other questions, just leave us a comment below. Please subscribe, share, comment, and like to the Audio Mastering channel so that this information can reach an even wider online audience. See you on the next one.